Hello YouTube, how's everyone doing? It's Professional here. So today I have a special video for you guys. Recently you might have seen my walkthrough of Mercenaries Playground of Destruction, and I had completed the entire game from start to finish, and I captured the entire deck of 52. And in this video, I will be talking about why Mercenaries is an awesome game, and why I love this game, and why it holds a special place in my heart. And this game is actually my favorite PS2 game of all time. It's my favorite PS2 game of all time, and I love this game so much that I actually inspired my PSN name by it. But anyways, what is Mercenaries Playground of Destruction? Now, a lot of people that saw my walkthrough, they never heard of this game. And some people, they weren't even born at the time when this game came out in 2005, or they were very, very young when this game was at its prime. So what is Mercenaries Playground of Destruction? Mercenaries is a game created in 2005, and it was made by Pandemic Studios. Unfortunately, the studio doesn't exist anymore because it was ruined by EA a few years later. But the story in Mercenaries Playground of Destruction is an open world game set in the country of North Korea. And I think this was a great idea on Pandemic Studios' part, because North Korea is a setting that's not done in a lot of games. There's not a lot of games that are set in North Korea, so it's a pretty unique setting, setting a game in the most isolated country in the world, and also one of the worst regimes in the world. Setting a game there is a pretty good idea. The North Koreans, they're pretty good villains to have in this game. So the story of the game is that in the future, and this is in an alternate, North Korea, where North Korea tried to transition to a democracy. And the story goes that President Kim tried to move the country towards democracy. However, his son, General Song, did not like that, overthrew his father in a coup. And General Song had then put his own regime into power and put really corrupt people in the North Korean government. He then started selling nuclear weapons to terrorists, and the Australian Navy found out about that. When the Australian Navy found out about that, the Allies launched a massive invasion into North Korea. And China, despite being North Korea's ally, actually invaded North Korea from the south, trying to turn North Korea into its own province. So the setting of North Korea was a great idea. And the whole idea of North Korea being an enemy that you fight in the game, also a great idea. You don't fight the North Koreans in a lot of video games. When you start Mercenaries up the first time, you choose one of 3 mercenaries, and each of them have different abilities, and you can choose Chris Jacobs, who is an American mercenary, or you can choose Jennifer Mui, who is a Hong Kong mercenary, or you can choose Matthias Nielsen, who is a Swedish mercenary. That's the guy that I played as in my walkthrough. And Nielsen, he is the fastest character in the game. Mui is the best character at stealth, and Jacobs is the character that carries the most ammo, I believe. And in this game, you play as a soldier for hire, working for various factions, and the goal of the game is to bring down the North Korean regime. It's to get the deck of 52. The deck of 52 are 52 cards of the worst people of the North Korean regime. They're active bounties, and when you capture them alive, you get much more money than if you kill them. And this is kind of crazy looking around for these guys. Some of these targets are scattered across the map, the lower cards. Some of the higher cards, they're only available in missions, where the ace cards, those cards, the highest ones, are available in special missions. When you gather enough intel, you get taken to a special area, and you go and look for them, and you capture these targets. These cards range from the club cards, which are Division 39, which are corrupt businessmen and gangsters, to the diamonds, which are the elites of the North Korean military, which you then have the hearts. The hearts are the North Korean nuclear weapon scientists, and then lastly you have the spades, which are the North Korean special forces, and you have Song's closest advisors, and then you have General Song, the ace of spades, who is actually worth $100 million captured alive, and he is the final card to get in the game. And when you finally get him, you finally work your way up, you capture every single target. You don't have to capture every target. You can also kill them, but if you work your way up, you get every single target, and then you go for General Song at the end, and you capture him, it feels very accomplishing. And even though General Song only appears 2 times in the game, he appears in a cutscene, and then he also appears at the very end of the game, even though he makes minimal appearances in the game, you feel that this is this evil dictator, this evil man that you gotta bring down, because you hear from the different factions about what this guy's been doing, you read various intel on what this guy's been doing, and you want to stop this madman who has access to nuclear weapons. You want to bring him and his regime down. But how do you bring down the deck of 52? By working for the various factions who supply you intel on their locations. And there are 4 main factions in the game. Then there's the 5th faction, which is the North Koreans, but the North Koreans are always hostile. You have the Allied Forces. The Allied Forces, the AN, they are comprised of mainly the US and a coalition of other allied countries, and they are led by Colonel Samuel Garrett. And you don't really work that much for the Allied nations unless you get an ace contract. You get an ace contract from them when you get enough intel, which means the highest cards of each set. And you can take some extra contracts from them, but the other factions do give you more work. The other factions are as follows. The South Koreans, who are led by Agent Buford, as you see in this case. He is a CIA operative who leads South Korean forces in the area. Then you have the Chinese, who are led by Colonel Peng. And then lastly, you have the Russian Mafia, which is led by Sergei. And the Russian Mafia is the most popular faction in this game, and some of these factions have pretty cool backstories, and they also have pretty cool intros. I mean, just listen to the Russian Mafia intro here.
Hey, all right, just what I need, a professional. My name is Sergei Voronov. This is my lieutenant, Yosef. We run the, discreet supply business around here. Everyone here needs stuff, vehicles, weapons, you name it, and we supply it. Discreetly. That means no one asks any questions, including you. I'll kill anyone who betrays my trust. You got a problem with that? You got a problem working for a killer? Huh? Answer me. Yosef is right. Listen, you're a mercenary. You'll be working for lots of people. I know how it is. But you want some extra cash? You come to Sergei. Speaking of which, I got a job right now you could take. I'm going to test you out. See if you've got what it takes to work for me. Bring me one of Song's troop transports. Should be easy to find, but not so easy to steal, eh? If you want in, Yosef here will give you all the details. On the other hand, you can say no and walk out that door right now. You do what you want to do.
Don't underestimate him. He may act like an idiot, but he's a ruthless killer.
However, there is one important thing to keep in mind, and that is that each faction in this game has their own goals and motivations. And some of these goals and motivations can actually conflict with each other. They can actually go to war with each other later in the game, and they actually do that. And the South Koreans, the Chinese, and the Russian Mafia, they tend to fight a lot. The Allied nations, they don't really fight with the other factions, they don't have conflicts with the other factions, they mainly give you contracts to go after the North Koreans. And these 3 factions, they will also give you contracts to go after the North Koreans. Early on in the game, most of their contracts will be focused on targeting the North Korean army. But later on, they'll give you factions to disrupt and attack other factions. And you have to be careful with this, because you can actually upset the other factions, because after all, you're a mercenary, you're a soldier for hire. You have no allegiance to any faction. Your allegiance is to money, making money. That is your primary goal. So you're going to be working for these factions, but you got to be careful not to piss them off. And if you piss them off, they will be hostile towards you, and then you have to pay massive bribes to get back in their favor. So you always got to try to balance it out. But the goals and motivations are as follows. The Allied nations, their main goal is to get rid of General Song. They want to get rid of General Song and get rid of his nuclear weapons. The South Koreans, they want Korea to be reunified again into one big country. The Chinese, they want to turn North Korea into a province of theirs. And the Russian Mafia, they want North Korea to be as destabilized and anarchistic as possible. They want as much chaos as possible because it's easy for them to make money. Their primary goal is to make money. They want to make as much money as possible. And with North Korea in complete chaos, that is the best opportunity for them to steal other nuclear weapons and other weapons that they can sell on the black market. That's the Russian Mafia's main source of income, the black market. And the black market plays a significant role in the game. You have the Merchant of Menace shop, and as you progress through the game, you unlock different things. You unlock different drops, which will give you different weapons, but you also unlock different vehicles, and the Russian Mafia can send those vehicles to you, different tanks, even helicopters later on in the game. So it's always cool with having this crazy delivery service that'll give you what you want, and you can cause a lot of chaos. And speaking of chaos in this game, you can destroy pretty much every single building in this game. Every single building and almost every single structure can be destroyed in this game. For a 2005 game, that was absolutely amazing. Now, each building has the same animation that it will use to fall down, but it's a 2005 game after all. But for being a 2005 game, the fact that you can blow up every single building, that is just crazy. And it made this game very awesome that you could just destroy so many structures. You can use a lot of airstrikes to your disposal. You can also order those from the Merchant of Menace, and these airstrikes will cause massive damage on infrastructure and enemy soldiers. And what about the map in Mercenaries? The map in Mercenaries is actually fairly large, and the first time that I played this game, I was, what, 10, 11 years old when it came out in 2005, I was pretty impressed with the size of the map. Now, in Mercenaries, the map is divided into the Southern Province, and the Southern Province is where you start the game, and at first I thought this was the whole map, and I was still impressed by it. I still thought that it was a decent size, but when you get into the third act of the game, you actually go into the Northern Province, and the Northern Province is also a fairly large size, so you have to teleport between the two. But it's still, if you combine both of these, the Southern and the Northern Province, it's a decently sized map, and the terrain and, the areas, it's vastly different. The Southern Province encompasses most of Pyongyang, which is North Korea's capital. You have other locations near the border. You have the DMZ, which is actually a real location in real life, and it shows that the developers, they did some research in North Korea as they were making this game. The DMZ is the demilitarized zone, and it's the border between North and South Korea. And the buildings that they actually have in the game, this is right where the game starts. The war starts out right on this part of the game, and the buildings here are very similar to the buildings in real life, and the buildings on the North Korean side and the South Korean side are very similar to each other. And there's also other locations. You have other locations, for example, like the Arch of Reunification, and this is near the Russian Mafia HQ. This is also in Pyongyang. In the game, it's different than the place that it is in real life, but this is meant to represent the way that North Korea wants South Korea to be reunified with them. There is also the Arch of Triumph, and this is located in Pyongyang as well, and this is the second largest arch in the world, and this is meant to symbolize Korean resistance to Japanese occupation. There is also the Ruiyong Hotel, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and this is a massive hotel that North Korea built, and it's an 105-floor building. The construction actually started in the late 1980s and did not finish until 2012 because it was constantly getting delayed. And this was a building that North Korea tried to build to impress the world, but it was abandoned, and it's not used to this day, and it's actually the number one largest building in the world that is unoccupied. So it's a massive unoccupied building, massive abandoned hotel. And this building does also play a prominent role in the game. In the game, it's actually much smaller than it is in real life, and it's renamed Song Tower. And in the game, the Ace of Clubs is actually using Song Tower in order as a relay station. He's trying to use it as a radio tower, and is also using it as a base of operations. And you actually have to destroy this building and bring it down. But the creepiest place that I would say is in this game is Kijong-dong. And in real life, this is actually nicknamed the Propaganda Village. This is also a place in real life, and this village is a village not too far from the border, from South Korea, and it's meant to look nice on one side, but the other side is actually fake. And when I was a kid, I didn't understand this. I didn't understand, I played this game when I was, 10, 11 years old. I didn't seem to understand why a lot of the buildings were fake. I'm like, why are the buildings fake? As I got older and, I read more about North Korea, I understand now why the buildings were fake. The whole purpose of this village being fake and look nice on the other side is they're trying to make North Korea look like a nice place to live, and they're trying to encourage defectors from South Korea to go into North Korea. So it's kind of a creepy place when you think about it, that this is actually a place in real life where a lot of buildings are actually fake. That's why it's nicknamed the Propaganda Village. So I don't want to go into too much, history here. There's a lot of other landmarks in this game. We also have, the Sino-Korean Friendship Bridge, and this is a bridge in the northern province where it's the border with China. On one side, you have the Chinese city of Dandong, and then you have the North Korean city of Sinuiju, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and this bridge connects China and North Korea. In the game, the Chinese are sending tanks and other troops across this bridge. In the second to last South Korean mission, you actually have to destroy this bridge to prevent the Chinese forces from crossing it. So my point in pointing out all these landmarks is the developers of this game, they did a lot of research into North Korea. The locations aren't exact, they're not perfect, it's a game after all, but they did do research into North Korea and to try and create, this game in that country, this big open world inside North Korea. They chose a lot of those locations carefully. They read into them, they placed them in the game, they did do some research, and playing this game inside North Korea, it's kind of creepy. I like the map and all, but it gives you that creepy, gloomy, dark feeling, and I didn't feel that same feeling from the second game. In this game, as you travel through North Korea, there's a lot of places that are devastated by war, but, there's other places when you go into, the urban cities, and you just hear the North Korean propaganda speakers, you see the statues of General Song, and then you see, all these propaganda posters, billboards all over the place. It's kind of creepy. I mean, just listen to this. But despite all of that, there's still one final thing I did not mention that's really good about this game, and you know what that is? This game has one of the best soundtracks of all time. Out of a lot of games I've played, this game probably has my favorite in-game soundtrack. I mean, just take a listen to the soundtrack in this game, listen to it.
I'm hearing reports of intense shelling in the area. Looks like you're just in time to be a hero. Head north to the Allied HQ. Garrett is expecting you.
Turn the corner. Coming in now.
Let's get to know.
Bombs free.
Great, you've destroyed one of the missiles. Looks like Choi has already fueled them up, so you might be able to set up chain reaction.
But where did this beautiful soundtrack come from? Where did it come from? An entire orchestra was hired in order to make the soundtrack for this game. They had a huge team of people playing so many different instruments, all working together to make this beautiful soundtrack for this beautiful game. And this video was taken by Eric Woods. I'll also link the original video to the soundtrack in the description, but this shows you just the amount of effort and care that they put into making this game. Not only did they put a lot of effort into the story, they put a lot of effort into the map and the gameplay, but they put a massive amount of effort into the soundtrack, and Mercenaries will go down as having one of the best soundtracks for a video game. This game deserves to be remastered. Mercenaries deserves a complete remake, something like Resident Evil 2 or 3, or Modern Warfare Remastered, a whole brand new engine. Whole brand new graphics. Keep the characters, keep the in-game soundtrack, but remake the game on modern systems. You do that, I guarantee you a lot of people would be interested in this game and a lot of people would play this game. There's a whole generation that has missed out on this game. This game came out over 15 years ago and it's a beautiful game and still my favorite PS2 game of all time. Pandemic Studios did something no other studio had done before. They had open world games back then. They had also war games. But what they did was, they made an open world game set in a war zone where you play as a mercenary, a soldier for hire, working for various factions. You're not tied to one specific faction. A huge open map, tons of destruction, every building that can be destroyed, a great story about bringing down General Song and his regime. There's nothing better than stealing a tank and causing chaos with that. Or maybe even better, stealing an attack helicopter, blowing up a ton of enemy tanks, blowing up a bunch of buildings, calling in airstrikes, destroying massive bridges, destroying tons of buildings. There's nothing more fun than that in a game. And this is why Mercenaries will go down as my favorite PS2 game of all time. And I hope that after watching this video, if you've never played this game, I hope that you give this game a try, because this game will forever hold a special place in my heart. And what score will I give this game? What score will this game get? This game will get a perfect 10 out of 10. That is the score that I'm going to give it. There is nothing that I dislike about this game. I love this game so much, and it will go down as my favorite personal PS2 game. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, drop a like, and if you're new to my channel and enjoy my content, subscribe. Let me know what you think down below, and I hope that you guys enjoy this game if you decide to play it. Take care, everyone.